This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at SIGGRAPH 2014. To my immediate right is Dr. Jon Peddie, Jon Peddie Research, and to his immediate right is Dr. Lincoln Wallen, CTO for Dreamworks. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why are we here?
Well, indeed, why are we here? You were holding this wonderful luncheon today about virtualization. Jon, maybe you could start us off. Tell us what virtualization is.
Virtualization is the sharing of resources amongst many users and potentially operating systems, and also the sharing of hardware resources amongst users. So the idea is that if you have a very powerful processor, it may not be utilized 100% of the time, and so you can give 60% to one user and 40% to another. And if its software is done correctly, that automatically load balances so everybody gets the amount they need.
So what are the practical benefits of technologies like this?
It gives you on demand. If you've got a burst in your workload and you need to get more resources quickly, you can grab them from other people who aren't using them. So you keep your workflow nice and smooth. And the downside, I won't say downside, but the secondary part is that it has the potential of reducing your overall CapEx costs, so you're not spending as much on hardware. But the reality of that is you still spend as much.
Now, you're going to have to forgive my ignorance, but when I hear cloud computing, should I be confusing that with virtualization, or is one a component of the other?
It's mushy. The definition is not tight yet. There is virtualization in cloud computing. There's not cloud computing virtualization, but there's virtualization is a component of cloud computing.
Now, let's talk a little bit about Dreamworks. I mean, this is obviously a technology that you're using. Can you elaborate a bit as to how virtualization is important to Dreamworks?
Yeah, I'll start with your last comment, which is the importance of the cloud to Dreamworks. So we run an internal or hybrid cloud, partly internal, partly external, and that cloud gives us the traditional benefit of any workload, any artist, any location at any time. And that's the flexibility that really helps optimize your use of both hardware resources as well as human resources. And movie making is very intensive in both.
I was intrigued. Actually, just a couple of days ago, I went to a joint presentation between Dreamworks and Intel. And from what I heard, I hope I heard correctly, is that normally a studio may work on one film at a time, and the animators are concentrating on one film. But now we're moving into a direction where you could have studios in different parts of the world all focused on a single film. Did I hear correctly?
Yeah, you heard completely correctly. I mean, that model of any artist on any project at any time has been very effective in allowing Dreamworks to scale from releasing one movie a year to 3 movies a year, as you see this year. Without any increase in our artistic headcount. So from an efficiency point of view, it's a really great demonstration of the power of virtualization or the power of cloud. I think the next important thing it teaches us, and certainly something we've been exploiting recently, is it heralds in a whole new approach to software architecture, where you assume the cloud, you assume the resources can be orchestrated, and that allows you to build software applications that aren't really constrained to a particular SoC, box, graphics card footprint, but really are designed to support a particular workflow or artistic process, regardless of the data load. So suddenly the artists are freed from the slowdowns and the friction and the reduction of complexity that you have to sort of endure when you're trying to force your work into a fixed compute resource, and that's been enormously liberating.
I'd like to point out that you should take Lincoln's comments and unrestrict them from just the movie industry, because everything he's saying applies to the game development industry as well.
Yes.
So how would the game development environment change?
Whatever he does, large gaming studios like Ubisoft, Microsoft, and so forth, they have the same problems and they have the same solutions.
Yeah.
Just to put this in perspective, and I'm hoping I'm remembering the statistic correctly, it was described that on average they'd look forward to maybe 3 to 4 seconds of animated film per week, and that would be a decent production cycle for a feature film. They'd expect higher productivity for, let's say, a TV series, but for a feature film, 3 to 4 seconds. As obviously as CTO, do you think virtualization would dramatically increase the amount of content that would be produced at a given time?
Lynn's law.
Actually, we choose not to increase the rate of production, but decrease the resources required to produce the entire movie. And the reason for allowing the time to remain broadly constant is because these are creative products and they require refinement, they require time, if you like, in the can. And the improvement in quality that comes from allowing the product to sit and to be looked at and to be thought about really matters. Also, we get an extra benefit, which is as our crews become more specialized and smaller, their effectiveness with each other, the collaboration and the sort of ideation that they do becomes more effective. No longer do we need a lot of people in order to put the frames together, but a small expert crew can now do what took a lot of people to do in the past.
Very good.
Just to add to that, there's a famous computer graphics scientist. His name is Jim Blinn. And he established what we call Blinn's law. And Blinn's law says basically that regardless of the resources that you give to the production of a film or a game, it always takes the same amount of time. And I was discussing that with his colleague Leonard at Dreamworks once, and I said, why don't you take advantage of this GPU power that you have and shorten your production time? And he just laughed at me and he said, we're not interested in shortening our production time, we're interested in making more beautiful movies. And so any more cycles they get, they're not going to use it to crunch time, they're going to do it to make bigger and more beautiful pictures.
Well, let's talk about bigger, more beautiful pictures, and also not just in film, but in gaming and other types of entertainment as well. We're obviously seeing an upsurge in an interest in virtual reality and augmented reality. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, well, I'll start with Dr. Peddie. What are your thoughts on where VR and AR is headed?
VR, let's start over. AR, actually, I can say it's the same. VR and AR right now are very personalized experiences. You do VR and AR by yourself. You don't share things. You don't mass game, for example. And the problem is because not everybody has the stuff, right? And the databases don't talk well to each other and so forth. One of the ideas that Oculus had was that this could become a vehicle for massed movie experience. And that's a controversial idea because when you put on a VR headset, you're isolating yourself from your companions. So how can you have a community experience if you've isolated yourselves? And the trick there is the software and the database. Can you have everybody looking at the same thing and saying, oh, gee, look at that? And if you can, then you start to become the director of the movie. And that's an area that we've talked about for decades, is could this ever happen? Should it ever happen? Because the director is the artist and he or she has certain set ideas as to how they want this movie to turn out. They don't want anybody messing with it, let alone some dumb person with a face sucker on.
Someone like me.
Yeah.
Well, Lincoln, if I could get as a professional filmmaker, and what's your take on VR?
I think it's a very interesting mix of interactive experience, which of course has grown enormously with the games industry over the last 20, 25 years. And is a very compelling consumer media type, but in a form that actually allows that interactivity to evolve, if you like, at a natural timescale. Not necessarily a Twitch experience, not necessarily a motor sense experience that many games take, but really steps into the possibility of storytelling. And so the idea of being inside a movie, maybe not influencing it, but at least experiencing it in a different way is a really interesting media type. One thing that becomes obvious, though, is that you've got to move away from game engine graphics in order to immerse the user in that sort of emotional experience. Right now, the VR experiences are very much trading on the fact that it's amazing to literally be in those environments in the first place. And that will carry them so far, but very quickly for mass market, the quality of those images really need to match the quality of the everyday world or the film. And that's going to be the next challenge for VR, I think.
From DreamWorks' point of view, like what challenges would DreamWorks like to see overcome in the VR world?
I think we have to work out how to match a certain amount of viewer agency with the best elements of linear storytelling. How we create emotion, how we create impact in a story, yet allowing the user to have some control over how they're viewing this. And that's a very challenging creative task, but I think that's the one that needs to be solved for these experiences to become very, very mass market.
Thank you both for joining us. It's an honor, and enjoy the rest of the show. This is Neil Schneider for MTBS-TV at SIGGRAPH 2014. We will, of course, be back with more. Thank you for watching.